Hey everybody, week 2 of my video. Today I want to talk about failure. One of the great sayings, one way or the other, depending on how you want to take it, is that failure is not an option. Apollo 13. It really does sound great up front. And even at that time, if you do some digging, you watch the Tom Hanks movie, if you do some research on it, and at that time, the overall goal, failure is not an option. Now, what the engineers and then everybody went through to get to that solution, a lot of failures, tons of failures, because if you don't fail, if it's perfect the first time, it's you don't there's nothing to learn. It's that simple. Why would you need an engineer? Why do you need an IT group if anybody can just implement software? One of my great failures, that I consider one of my great failures, was when I was working mid to late 90s, working for a grocery distributor. They also owned grocery stores kind of throughout Michigan. This was back in NT4, so there were primary domain controllers, backup domain controllers, but in this case, every store, about 20 to 30 stores at the time, each one was a PDC and a primary domain controller. And with NT4, you could not remove a PDC role. They weren't even roles at that time, really. You couldn't remove it. Once it was a PDC, that was it. You had to, reformat, reinstall, and go back. At the time, I had found a utility that would actually downgrade a PDC to a member server. I spent about 2 weeks testing, probably a good 40, 60 hours altogether, making sure that it would work, because the idea was, didn't want to have to go all over Michigan to manually do all of this. Go to each store. It would take 5 times longer and that's probably being generous. But tested everything, got it to where it would work perfectly. I had exact hardware set up. The problem was nobody really knew the operating system set up or how any of that was originally done. Whoever had done it was long gone, and so I tried to recreate as best I could. Deployment day came, evening. I had to do it in the evening because the stores close and then reopen, so I had this window of a few hours. Kicked off one, it downgraded, and it went into its reboot. Great. Young me went ahead and did 10 more, or 9 more, for a total of 10. And when I went back to the first one, it wasn't on. I couldn't communicate with it. No ping, no nothing. Could not get to it. An hour or so later, I cave. I call up one of the store engineers, great guy, literally took me from west side of Michigan to the east side of Michigan and the 10 stores in between, and ended up having to basically manually reinstall it, just like we were trying to avoid. The reason that it failed, if anyone's wondering, is simply because the store servers were set up as a software RAID for the hard drives. And whatever that PDC utility did, or downgrade utility did, it messed with that software RAID, and the disks were gone according to the operating system. I had no idea those drives were in a software RAID, so I never tested against that. So even though everything worked perfectly in my test environment, which will always happen, you'll get it working perfectly. Once you move something into production, something's going to go wrong. You need to plan and add that time in, what you think it will take to fix whatever issues come up. So while we all love to say failure is not an option, for techies, that is usually the way we learn something, especially in depth. I can watch training videos. I can read manuals. Those are perfect scenario trainings. And obviously, nothing ever works that way. So you need to plan to do a ton of testing. You're going to fail a lot. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to find issues. And you're going to get it as good as you can get it before you move into production. But you have to put a buffer in there for troubleshooting, because there will always be something that comes up. And don't forget to have a backup plan because sometimes the issue that you hit is bad enough. You need to call it, back it out, and try again on another date. So while people love to say that, the failure is not an option, it is an option. It happens to every one of us. When I was younger, that was hard to take. I hated failure of any kind. I mean, and when you're young, I was always afraid for my job. It's just the way it is. You don't want to lose a job. You don't want to make that one mistake. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions, whether it's from movies, shows, whatever, media of some kind, even news, that, you're going to hit a mistake and you're just going to get let go. That's going to be it. It happens, don't get me wrong, but it is typically a very rare occurrence that something like that does actually happen. You got to mess up pretty darn bad. I mean, I screwed up 10 stores. I didn't get fired. I had a great manager at the time. So it's lessons learned, and if you take those mistakes and learn something from them, you've succeeded. That's the bottom line. You have succeeded in learning, in implementing. You take those and you move on to the next project or the next troubleshooting, whatever the case may be. So don't let anyone ever tell you can't fail. For the overall project, maybe. I mean, if I'm converting desktops or something, whether it's EUC, whether it's pushing out physical desktops, you got to get those out. You can't fail at that. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to hit roadblocks. You're not going to hit bumps. There's going to be failures, something you missed in testing. We're human. It happens. And I can say 25 plus years later, you're going to continue to do it. It's just the way what we do is in technology. So, please, especially if you're younger, you're getting into this business, don't be afraid to make mistakes. It sounds worse in your head than it will ever be. And if you do make a mistake, fess up to it right away. Face the music. Don't try to hide it. Don't, if it's something, especially if it's bad, don't try to fix it yourself if you're unsure. Always a huge mistake. Always bring people in and ask for help. Please ask for help. If you have a team that is not willing to help you troubleshoot something, try to fix something, that is, to me, a red flag, and you want to be aware of that. So just fess up. All right, that's what I wanted to talk about today, everybody. I will see you next week.